Welcome everyone. I'm Jed Shlackman. I'm a holistic counselor. I also do work as an energy healer, as a hypnotherapist, and I look at things from a holistic perspective for healing. In this video I'll be speaking about the topic of depression, treating depression, and the biological and psychological basis for understanding the dangers of using antidepressant drugs or medications. Depression is a state that someone is in, so there are a variety of symptoms that are looked upon as indicators of someone being depressed using that label. But if we think of it in energetic terms, depression is kind of like a withdrawal, a retracting of your energy flow. So you're kind of disconnecting from the flow of life in a sense. There could be a variety of reasons for that, a number of different causes. Some of them could be biological, some of them could be psychological, social, environmental, spiritual. So there's multiple layers or dimensions to what might trigger a state of feeling depressed. So it's not a discrete medical condition that someone is experiencing depression. There are a variety of potential factors or reasons causing that. Some of those factors could be biological. For example, someone could be malnourished, someone could be in a place where they're getting very little sunlight, very little exposure to the outdoors, very little physical movement or exercise, and that's causing their energy to kind of get slow and sluggish and depressed. There's obviously emotional triggers. So when someone experiences a major loss or disappointment in their life, it's natural to feel your heart broken in some way, to feel that sense of energetic draining where you had your energy devoted to something or invested in something, whether it's a relationship, a business, some endeavor or pursuit, and you've experienced some disappointment, disillusionment, some grief, and if that persists, then you might get labeled with depression. But the reason you're depressed is not a lack or deficiency of some drug or medication. So trying to treat the issue with a drug or medication is not resolving the actual cause. Even if there's a biological factor, the medication is not resolving that either. If you're malnourished, if you're not getting enough sleep or sunlight or exercise, taking a medication isn't fixing or resolving that. It may temporarily override the symptom. It may artificially give you some form of stimulation to feel a little more elevated, but once that wears off, you may actually end up in a worse, more depressed state until you take another stimulant type of medication to get yourself boosted again, and it can become a vicious cycle where a person becomes dependent upon increasing amounts of drugs to maintain their ability to function. So that's not a healthy path to get stuck in. You don't want to get trapped in dependency. Ideally, you want to look for the actual causes, the actual factors in your life that you can address to restore your sense of balance, your health, your harmony, your being in the flow of life and feeling motivated, feeling inspired, feeling that you're pursuing something that's fulfilling for you. So those are the ways to truly treat or address depression. And we're going to look now at what's actually happening when someone takes a medication, why even though it might give them a temporary relief from the symptoms, they might feel better for a short period of time while they're under the influence of that medication. And you can keep that up for a long time, in a sense, continuing to take that medication until eventually you build tolerance to that, it doesn't produce that effect anymore, and you're still having to face and deal with whatever the actual causal issues were. So we'll use the example here of the SSRI antidepressants, which in the current time period are the ones that tend to be prescribed most often. So you have SSRI, and that stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So we'll look at the mode of action of that, how it's designed or intended to create a certain effect. And this deals with the neurotransmitter serotonin. Serotonin is a chemical that's synthesized in our body that kind of gives us energy and motivation. It's correlated with an elevation of mood. Correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation, however. So all the factors that elevate or lift up your mood psychologically can have a ripple effect where your mind, your emotions direct your body to produce these chemicals to support that feeling or state of being. Now, there are things biologically that can influence what's going on with those chemicals in your body that can either impair or improve your body's ability to synthesize serotonin. That includes your diet, your exercise, your sleeping patterns. So all of that can have an impact. And obviously what is happening emotionally and psychologically is having the impact. So if you're feeling excited about things you're doing in your life, if you're in love with someone, if you're very active physically, all of that can get your body to produce more of the serotonin. If you're starving yourself, if you're not eating much at all, your body could start to have difficulty maintaining the serotonin level and other chemicals your body produces, since to synthesize those, your body needs specific elements, things like minerals, vitamins, amino acids, essential fatty acids, enzymes. So all of these biological materials are being used to create things. That process does not require any medication. So normally your body is synthesizing and regulating or balancing these chemicals using its own resources, its own intelligence, its own self-regulation system that involves mind and body. So your body is responding to what's happening psychologically and energetically. So it's actually quite hazardous to try to just force the body to do something using a medication. The medications are actually interfering with your body's self-regulation, and they're also foreign chemicals that are stressful to your body. They don't naturally belong in your body, so your body has to break them down and excrete them. So you're actually putting an extra form of stress on your body when you're taking different pharmaceutical drugs, even if they may have a brief desirable effect, if they're, let's say, suppressing a symptom or giving you relief from pain or some other symptom, there's still the adverse side effects, you could say, that medication can produce, because it is in some way disrupting your body's natural self-regulation, plus it's a chemical that's stressful for your body to process. Your liver or kidneys are given extra work to help filter this out and clear it from your body after it's had its effect. So if we can avoid giving the body these extra chemical stresses, it would be wise to do that, to pursue other approaches of supporting your health or addressing whatever symptoms you're confronting. Coming back to the SSRI medications, what they are doing is they're interfering with your body's reuptake of that neurochemical. So during the daytime, there's often a good amount of serotonin circulating in your body, in your nervous system, but not only your nervous system. Serotonin can be present in your gut and other parts of your body. And then at nighttime, your body is withdrawing that, and it's converting things into melatonin, which helps you sleep, which helps you rest. So when you're active and busy in your daily life, you'll have greater serotonin levels. And then at nighttime, you need to settle down, you need to relax, and you need to go into the sleep state. So your body will break down the serotonin and convert those chemicals for use in synthesizing melatonin. There's a relationship between those two hormones or neurotransmitters. So your body knows what it's doing. It's regulating things to maintain your healthy functioning. So when you interfere with this reuptake mechanism, the medical intention for that is to keep the serotonin circulating longer in your system, in your brain, in your nervous system, based on the theory that you have a deficiency of serotonin, the so-called imbalance, and that you need to do this artificial thing to try to keep the level of serotonin higher. But what you're doing is you're interfering with your body's own intelligence, its own means of sustaining the level of serotonin that it feels it needs. If you keep that serotonin circulating longer than it normally would be circulating, there's a couple different things that could happen, a couple different ways your mind-body system might respond to that. So the first potential is that your body is continuing to produce its ordinary normal amount of serotonin, and that serotonin is circulating in the system longer, so the levels of serotonin start to steadily rise higher and higher, and you have the possibility of getting too much serotonin active in your nervous system. And the effect of that tends to be inducing some type of mania or psychosis. So it's like you're over-energized, overstimulated from all this extra serotonin that's building up. So one of the potential adverse effects of using antidepressant medications is to have this kind of manic or psychotic state get induced. And that's seen in some cases as a cause of some aberrant behaviors that people exhibit when they're using those medications. So there are cases of homicide and suicide that have been attributed to those manic or psychotic effects, where the person kind of has this rush of energy and acts impulsively. So other impulsive behaviors like impulsive sexual behavior, impulsive shopping, gambling, some of those can be triggered in some sense by this overload of serotonin that develops when you start using medications that interfere with your body's reuptake, your body's protective mechanism that normally ensures you don't have too much serotonin build up, that you're blocking that self-regulation or protective mechanism with this medication, so that creates that risk. So that's what I'll call the hyperserotonin syndrome. Now, the other possibility is that your body recognizes this risk of too much serotonin building up because you're interfering with the reuptake. And so, to adapt to that, the fact that the serotonin is circulating extra long in the nervous system, the body intervenes to protect itself in a sense by reducing the amount of serotonin receptors. So there's these receptors in our nervous system where the serotonin attaches and activates to create its effect of energy regulation or metabolism. So your body can start to reduce the amount of serotonin receptors it has over time as a way to protect itself from the effect of the medication causing the serotonin to circulate extra long, the reuptake blocking effect. So you have reduction of receptors. Now, if you have less than the normal amount of serotonin receptors now in your body, then when you withdraw the medication, so when you don't have the serotonin circulating extra long, when it just circulates its normal length, its normal duration in the system, and you have fewer receptors, that means it's going to be harder to maintain the natural effect of serotonin in your body. It's going to increase the risk of not enough serotonin active in the system. So you have like a withdrawal effect. So you become depressed now because you've impaired your serotonin system. You've pushed your body to reduce the amount of serotonin receptors it has, and now just to get a normal, uplifted, happy state in your life, it's more challenging than it was actually to begin with, because now you have fewer receptors for serotonin. And this is something that happens a lot with psychiatric medications, where they're in some way using an unhealthy, hazardous mechanism to try to affect the amount of a chemical that's active, whether it's serotonin, dopamine, noradrenaline, whatever neurotransmitters you're trying to affect. If you use drugs to artificially affect their activity in the body will often compensate by changing the amount of receptors leading to either like too much or too few. So you're impairing your body's ability to maintain its own balance. The psychiatric field's idea that there is a chemical imbalance they're treating, in a sense, is kind of backwards. What they're actually doing is they're interfering for the short term to create a certain compensatory effect in a way that actually impairs your body's own ability to balance itself. So then over time, in the long term, you're actually likely to create further problems, to create even more impairment or compounding of the original supposed imbalance, especially if you've neglected to address any of the actual causal factors that are contributing to the state of depression. So if you do address those causal issues, then that can protect you to some extent from any negative adverse effect created by using the medication. But still there is this potential for the hyperserotonin effect, and then by reduction of the serotonin receptors, it can lead to hypo, too little serotonin being active in your system. So what you're actually doing is interfering with the natural balance. Your body has the intelligence to maintain its natural balance. If there's a lot of serotonin in your system, there's a reason why, and you want to investigate and understand what's happening rather than just trying to guess that, oh, okay, I'm feeling depressed, I'll take a medication to force my serotonin to circulate longer to hopefully raise my mood. There's all these potential hazards of intervening in that way, whereas if you find what's actually triggering you to feel depressed, whether it's biological, social, psychological, spiritual, etc., and you address those things, you don't need to try to force something with a medication. Your system will naturally maintain its own balance when you nourish and support it properly through your diet and lifestyle, through your social interactions, through your pursuit of things that are meaningful and fulfilling in your life. So those are the factors that support our sense of joy and well-being. Ultimately, no medication is going to bring you joy and meaning and fulfillment in your life. It can give you a temporary chemical high, so to speak, but what goes up must come down. Everything in life and creation follows certain principles of balance. So if you try to force yourself into a certain state, the system, the mind-body system, will try to adapt to that, and it could lead to the opposite effect, particularly in the long term. So over the long term, treating depression with medication can actually lead to a more prolonged or chronic type of depression, whereas if you had actually addressed the real causes of it, it might have much more quickly resolved itself. You might have restored your harmony, your joy in life, and so on, if you addressed the actual causes rather than ignoring those and diverting your attention to relying on medication and being caught up in staying on that medication every day to avoid the withdrawal effect. So we really need to think things through in a more holistic manner if we want to get lasting results in our life, just looking for some immediate chemical effect, some short-term gratification, can lead to long-term harm. And this is something that mental health professionals, medical professionals would be wise to consider if they really want to help their clients and patients. They want to, or would want to, look at all the different factors that affect our mental health: the biological, psychological, sociological, environmental, spiritual, all those elements of life that are relevant. If a doctor sees you feeling depressed and says, okay, let's just give you this medication, they're neglecting or ignoring all these other variables, all these real significant issues that are part of your life. Even in psychotherapy, psychotherapists tend to focus on one particular technique or treatment philosophy while neglecting a number of other forms of psychotherapy that could be relevant. A lot of therapists are just doing talk therapy, focusing on your thoughts or your behaviors, and they're neglecting your subconscious patterns, your past traumas, your spirituality, your energy, your lifestyle. So we want to be more inclusive, more holistic in how we look at a human being and their life experience. If we don't, then we might do something that's superficially attempting to treat a symptom, but actually has unintended harmful effects for the long term. So if you are taking any psychiatric medications, antidepressants, or any other form of medication, be aware that your body has likely in some way adapted to that. It's altered its chemistry and its functioning to compensate for the presence of those chemicals that are not normally or naturally present in your system. So attempting to abruptly quit or withdraw from the medication, that has potential risks and adverse effects. So ideally you would want to have some support biologically through things like nutrition, socially and psychologically with support groups, with therapists who can help you process things. So not to try to just do that on your own without any form of support. It helps to have professional support and guidance if you do desire to wean off of a medication. So in this presentation, I'm not suggesting anyone just abruptly stop using a medication because of the risks from the medication, to realize there's also risks from the process of trying to withdraw. So find whatever support you can or guidance. If you're intending to break away from medication and shift toward other forms of therapy, a more holistic approach to treating depression or any other mental health diagnosis. This video is for educational purposes. It's not intended to replace receiving any form of diagnosis or treatment from qualified professionals who are directly working with you. For those that are interested in learning more about holistic health and personal growth topics, I invite you to visit my website, which is phinsights.com. That's phinsights.com. For now, I'm wishing each of you a wonderful day. Namaste.